Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. We have a very easy project for you today. It's going to be an eco shopping bag. So if you remember the little strawberry shaped bag and it's got a drawstring on it and then you pop your bag inside, that's what we're doing today. Come along and I will show you how we go about doing this. Now when we are doing this, I'll give you the measurements for the bag that I'm making now, but you can actually do this in any height or width that you want. So come along and I'll show you how to go about making this bag. Okay, here's what we have. We have 2 strips of fabric that are 2 inches wide by 22 inches long, and 2 strips that are 2.5 inches wide by 7 inches, a square of fabric that is 7 inches square, and then we have 2 pieces of fabric that are 15 inches wide and 17 inches long or tall. Because we're going to be folding this fabric up or scrunching it up basically, I'm just using a lighter weight cotton here. The first thing we want to do is take our handle fabric, fold that in half, fold the raw edges in, and then fold that in half again, and we'll take that to the machine and stitch down both long edges. Take one of your main pieces of fabric, fold that in half. This is the longest point here and the shortest around here. Mark the centre. The centre point marked here at 7.5 inches. Roughly half of that is 3 3/4, which is a halfway point from here to the outside edge. With our centre point marked here, I'm going to place my handle 4 inches on either side of the centre. I've got 4 inches from the centre out, and again on this side. Take your other piece of fabric and just line that up like that, and you can make the same markings on there. You don't need to mark the centre position. I'm going to place one of my handles directly over that mark, keeping the handle nice and straight. I'm bringing the other end up and around to the other marking. Grab the other one and do exactly the same thing. Centre the handle over the mark that you've made, and you can just check your handles to make sure they're in the same position there. Before we fold the edges of our fabric over, we're just going to stitch the ends of our handles in place. I'll just go and quickly do that now, and then I'll come back and we'll fold our hems. With our handles stitched in place, turn your fabric around and start hemming the top section. So what we need to do here is do 2 folds. Fold that in 1/2 inch and then fold that in again, and then we'll top stitch. Once you've folded that over the first time, we will fold that over one more time. You'll see that the handle is now on the wrong side of the fabric, and that's fine, because what we're going to do now is go along and do a row of top stitching and then a row of stitching along the bottom edge of this hem. So we'll do 2 rows, but whilst we're doing that, we're going to bring the handle up at both sides, and that handle is going to be stitched once up there and once down the bottom, and we've already stitched it on the very edge as well, so it's going to be really secure inside the hem of our bag. We'll do that for the other one as well. Okay, we have both top edges now with a double folded hem. We'll take this to the machine and we'll top stitch at the very top edge and then on the edge of the fold here as well. So you can see that handle has come underneath the hem and then folded back over and sits nice and flat. With your 2.5 by 7 inch strips, take the short edge and just fold that up twice by 1/4 inch each time. We're just doing another double hem here, and we'll repeat that for this one as well. We'll take that to the machine and then we'll stitch that hem down. Now I'm just making these bags for myself, so I'm not even going to change my thread colour. But all I want to do here is hem the ends of both of these pieces of fabric. The next thing we need is our 7 inch square of fabric, and we're going to cut that straight across on the diagonal. Once we cut this on the diagonal, we're going to have our bias edges exposed on our fabric. So you want to be very, very careful when handling it. I'm just going to show you an example first. So these are my straight edges of the fabric. As soon as you cut your fabric on the diagonal, you want to be very careful on this diagonal section here. It's the bias. And when you're stitching or handling it, if you pull this, you're going to stretch it out of shape. So if I keep doing that, you can see that this is actually going to be a little bit longer than the fabric. Now this is only a small piece and I haven't stretched it out of shape too much, but you can see how much it can actually stretch. So when you're working with bias fabric, or you want to handle it carefully, I'm going to cut from the corner to corner, and there's our two bias edges. Just set that aside. Take one of your bag pieces, and on the right hand corner we're going to make a mark at 6.5 inches from the bottom edge, and we'll do that at both sides. So along the bottom and along the side we're making a 6.5 inch mark there and here. Take your ruler and draw a straight line from one side to the other. We want to find the center position here, and the easiest way to do that is just to bring your side edges up and then just finger press a fold. That's our midpoint just there from here to here. Then take your little 7-inch strip of fabric, fold it in half, wrong sides together, and measure 1 inch from the top and fold it in half and find the center. So we'll just finger press that and place that just a little bit over the line that you've just drawn. So I've got a chalk mark along here. I'm going to line that up with the diagonal line that I've drawn, and I'll pop a pin in place, and then take one of your bias edges and place that right side down and line that up on that drawn line, and you're going to have an overhang here of about 1/4 inch on either side. You can fold this in half and mark the center, but be very careful when you're doing that. Okay, with our 3 layers of fabric here, we've got our main fabric, we've got our contrast, and we've got our half square triangle. We're going to stitch from here, from the intersecting point just here, it's 1/4 inch, all the way along until you get to the end, and you'll have that overhang there as well, and you will actually stitch down to that intersection, which should measure 1/4 inch. Once you've done that, you can just flip that over, and these straight edges here will line up along the straight edge here. And for the other side of the bag, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to have it on the opposite side. So we don't want it on this side. We want to have a triangle on the right side and on the left side. Okay, the opposite corners are pinned down. I'm going to take them both to the machine now, 1/4 inch along here and along there. When that's done, I'm going to fold that down, press it, and I'll actually go and stitch the fabric down on the very edge as well, just so that it doesn't flap about and move when we sew it together later. I've stitched that down and I've pressed it so that the triangle faces down, and I've got this little flap sitting here. Now if it doesn't line up properly, it could be because your fabric has stretched a little bit, and in my case I didn't actually cut it perfectly straight. So I'm just going to trim off that little bit of fabric on the side there. I've done it already on the other one. Usually they'll match up, but I've used a really old piece of fabric and hadn't pressed it first. So you should actually iron your fabric first. All right, we have our triangles on opposing corners. Now we need to place one piece right side down and the other piece right side up, because we're going to do French seams. So we'll line up our side edges and the bottom edges. When you line it up, line up the diagonal points, and from there you can line up the rest of the bag. Okay, we've got both side edges and the bottom edge pinned together. We're going to stitch all the way down here, along the bottom and up the side. Do a back stitch at the beginning and the end so that it doesn't come undone, and we'll do 1/4 inch seam all the way. And then just make sure that you've actually caught both layers of fabric as you've gone around. When I get to a section that's got a fair bit of bulk in it, I'm actually going to back stitch and then go forward again just to strengthen that seam. Okay, I've done a 1/4 inch seam along the sides and the bottom. I'm going to now trim that seam back to about 1/8 inch, and I'm also going to trim the corner as well. So we don't want to cut through the stitching line, and just make sure you've actually stitched all the layers of fabric together before you trim. Turn your bag the wrong way round. Poke out all the corners. You can use a pin to help poke the corner out. Then pin the side edges together so that you've got the seam right on the very edge. Now I've pinned both side edges and along the bottom, and we have our raw edges on the inside now. What we need to do is stitch all the way down along the bottom and back up the side to close in that raw edge that we've got from the French seam. Now every time I do this, even though I think I've cut off enough fabric on the inside there, I never do. So rather than doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the sides and along the bottom, I'm going to do a 3/8 inch seam allowance or a 1 centimetre, just a little bit more than that 1/4 inch that we usually do, because that will make sure that all of my raw edges are enclosed. So this is the final stitching that I'll be doing, and remember I'm doing a 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'll be back stitching at the beginning and at the end. And that's done. Okay, all we need to do now is turn this the right way around, and you want to bring your points through as best you can. Now we're almost finished. All we need to do now is run some cord around our little pockets here. If you have one of those little toggle bolts, then all you need is a 20-inch piece of thread and bring it through. Now I can't find my bodkin, so I'm just going to use whatever this tool is. I don't know what this is. If somebody knows, I'll show you a close-up. If somebody knows what that is used for, it's got a little hook, like a latch hook on the end, and then it looks like a split at the bottom. I don't know. Let me know what this is. I'm going to use it as a bodkin to pull my thread through. Now, if you have a little toggle bolt, then I would just put the toggle on the end here, tie it in a knot, and be finished. I don't have one to show you how to put that on. I'm going to use a double cord. I'll tie that one in a knot and flip that over. With this cord, we went in at this end and came back around. This next cord, we're going to come in at this end and go around. So we'll have a cord to draw on the opposite side. Feed that through from the other side and flip it over. And then we'll knot the ends of these. We have our draw cord in place. Trim the edges off. But before we do that, I will show you how to fold this up. Look, it really just gets scrunched in. There's no real way that you have to fold this up. After you've used it a couple of times, you're probably just going to shove the whole thing in all at once. Scrunch it up, and there we have a purple strawberry. Ideally, if you have one of those little toggles, you can use that and just use one string and then pull it shut. Otherwise, 2 cords opposite ends will be fine. So you can pack that away in your handbag, and to use it, just open it out, pull your bag out, and you can stuff all your groceries in there. So it's pretty simple. So whilst everybody else is making little red strawberries, I'm making purple strawberries, just for something a little bit different. It's a simple little bag and easy enough to pack away in your larger bags when you go shopping. Pop it open, shake it out, and there you have your very easy to use and store little shopping bag. And they pack away really easily as well. You don't have to go and fold it up. You can just scrunch it all up into the bag, or into the strawberry, and there you go. Now, I would have preferred to have done this with a toggle bolt, so I would have just used 1 cord instead of 2 and popped a toggle bolt in there and then pulled it closed. But I didn't have any, or at least I've got some, I just couldn't find them. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm not doing this as a sew to sell video because I I can't really be bothered selling them. Although, why do you guys do this to me? Whenever I say that, I think I really should be, because I could easily just have these hanging up in the shop, packed away like this. I was thinking I don't want to sell them because they're too big to have as floppy bags around the shop. But maybe I can do some. I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.